Good evening and welcome. Over the past few years, the Legal Aid Commission of Fiji has grown exponentially and is now the largest law firm in Fiji, currently with 19 branches around the country. Tonight we speak with the Director Shaheen Ali and find out about some of the work that the Commission is doing. So good evening, and it's a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Good evening.
As we said, the Commission has grown exponentially, especially in the past few years. What's driving this exponential growth?
Firstly, it's basically the funding from the government, which has. And I've been with the Legal Aid Commission for 15 years now. And over the years, I've actually seen the growth of the Commission, not only in terms of opening the branches, but also in terms of the staffing numbers as well. When I joined Legal Aid, we had 3 branches around Fiji, Suva, Lautoka and Labasa. Now we have 19 all around Fiji, and we've got 3 more opening up very soon as well. Yes. So the funding is one, and obviously the support and the backing of the staff, no doubt, is also very helpful in these sort of things.
So essentially, most of the work that the Legal Aid Commission does is to help out those that need some legal advice or some help, but for those that cannot afford it in a pro bono manner, that is. Talk to us about that culture of pro bono cases.
Pro bono, well, in fact, the Legal Aid Commission is the only law firm that provides this sort of service at a very large scale. We are the largest law firm, as you pointed out earlier. And what we found is that there seems to be a lack of pro bono culture in Fiji, unfortunately. We do have private lawyers who do take up some of the pro bono cases, but not as to the extent that some of the other jurisdictions do. We've tried to engage with the Fiji Law Society and other practitioners on the first hour procedure that we have in place, and I'll discuss that a bit later as well. So there seems to be a lack of that culture in Fiji, and hopefully, sometime in the near future, we can perhaps engage with the private bar and have, or work with them.
And starting off, I know for a fact that the Legal Aid Commission had a limited range of services, and a few years in that was expanded. Now the Legal Aid Commission does civil matters as well. So what was did you see that there was a need for such services to grow?
Yes, traditionally Legal Aid only did family and criminal matters, and we're always tagged as an organization which helped the criminals, or helped the criminals. So obviously that is not true. We don't help criminals, so we assist criminals. Those persons who have been convicted, yes. So what we do is we take up appeal matters. But you can't tag every person as a criminal, especially when they've just been charged. So everybody has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. So we provide assistance in family criminal and now civil. In the last few years, we've actually increased our presence in that area and the services that we provide in the area of civil law. And this is because when we do awareness programs, when we went around the country, we realized that there's a great demand for work in the area of civil law. Wills, probate, letters of administration, deed poll, power of attorney, these are very much high in demand, especially amongst the rural and remote areas of the population of Fiji, where people don't have the money or the resources to actually pay for a private lawyer to get this done. So our data showed that there was a huge demand in that area, and that's why over the last few years we've actually increased our services in that area as well.
If I may digress, there's still a bit of hesitancy from those who have never engaged the services of legal aid in matters that they'd like to get sorted out or looked at, because they tend to think that if I go to legal aid, maybe they're not going to be as good as the private lawyers. I've had instances where I've spoken to people, those who happen to come from underprivileged families, and they still would put everything that they have into a private law firm instead of engaging your services. Why do you think that is?
It's quite unfortunate that some of these comments are being made. I mean, I've dealt with a few directly myself. My staff have as well, and at public and social gatherings, these sort of conversations do go on by some lawyers who say that our legal aid lawyers are not competent enough, or they don't have the standard. I don't know what that standard is, but what I do tell my staff is the only standard or the benchmark is actually the bench. And the bench here, I mean the judicial officers, the judge or the magistrate. So take into comments what the judge or magistrate has said about your level of competency, right? Not what some other lawyer may be commenting you on about, because obviously they don't assess your performance. It's the judge or magistrate. So we try to change the mindset of our lawyers as well, especially our staff, because they do get hurt by some of these comments, but we need to move on. What we also found out was that quite recently, last year in fact, through social media, one private practitioner had commented that this particular lawyer wasn't doing the case very well in court, criminal matter. and that perhaps she needed more training. Legal aid lawyers in general need more training because they're not competent. It just so happened that after that comment was made, a few days later, our lawyer got an acquittal. So basically won the case, and that social media comment disappeared. But before it did, we had many private lawyers, very senior lawyers, actually commenting on it, which is very sad and disappointing. But you see, these are things that actually do happen. We don't want to let that get into the way of our service delivery. What I can definitely say is we do have very competent staff, and we have well over 100 lawyers who actually carry out these services. We have specialized divisions, family, criminal, and civil, where we have specialized unit and team members who deal with such matters on a daily basis. And we've had lawyers who joined in from the private bar, who used to be in private practice, who decided to join legal aid. So that should indicate that, some of these comments that are being made are unfair. Or perhaps what I would say is that, because their business seems to be affected by the opening of our legal aid branches. And we've had people who've actually poached our clients.
Well, you've also got stats to back that up. In 2016, you had legal aid applications that were received 12,573. The following year, 16,733. And then just last year, 20,504. That's quite an alarming number when you consider the fact that there's so much of a workload that your lawyers would have to work through. Talk to us about how you handle that.
Yes. It is challenging. And what I tell the staff is, look, this is what we've signed up for. Service to the community, service to the poor. These are the people that perhaps no one else would touch because they can't afford the services, unfortunately. So these are the people who actually rely on legal aid to get them justice. And if you look at the Constitution, it has provisions where legal aid is specifically mentioned and assistance must be provided for those who can't afford such services. So yes, the stats that you pointed out are spot on, and we've seen a growth between 16 to 20% in applications being received, and there's been a greater increase in the number of persons coming to get advice in all areas of the law. Yes.
If we can look at these statistics in light of the negative stereotype that we talked about before, and I think especially from the public's perspective, one of the things that is driving this negative stereotype is the fact that at any given branch or with any given legal practitioner, there may be a certain amount of case files. If, let's say, for example, a lawyer is overloaded with work, or each lawyer is assigned a large number of case files, do you think that that is something that would affect their performance?
Sometimes it can. Individuals work differently, and how they cope with the workload is different as well. At one stage, I can confidently say, about 4 or 5 years back, we had lawyers who had about 500 or 600 files each. Right? We've brought that number down to about 200, 300 at the moment. Some of the staff have actually about 150 files. So we've drastically brought that number down, and we continue to hire more lawyers because what we want is, obviously, we want a healthy workforce as well. We don't want to overload our staff with files, and obviously because then the quality may get compromised. So we're very careful of that as well. So yes, while some lawyers may have a high number of files, but we make sure that the quality is not compromised.
We'll have more for you when we come back from our break. Ms. Ali, let's talk about the first hour procedure. For someone who may not be aware, can we have a brief overview of what the first hour procedure is and when it was implemented by Legal Aid?
Sure. I'll give a quick background information on this. Fiji ratified the United Nations Convention Against Torture in March 2016. And arising out of that, what happened was the Legal Aid Commission and the police have gotten into a partnership whereby what we do now is make sure that persons have early access to justice or early access to a lawyer. What that basically means is that, let's say, a person who is arrested and detained by the police would have access to a legal aid lawyer within that first hour of arrest being made. And we commenced on this pilot program back in November of 2016, 1st of November 2016. And so far it's been extremely successful. We've dealt with over 4,500 cases where we've gone out and actually assisted members of the public who have been arrested and or detained. And I'm proud to say that we haven't defaulted so far. Yeah.
So when we talk about this, there's been so many articles that have come out in different media publications about the importance of the first hour procedure and why people need to know their rights when they have been arrested or if they've been detained by the police. Why is it so important?
What happens is that when a person is arrested or detained, those first few hours are very crucial. That's the time when a person is very vulnerable. You've been picked up by police officers, put into a van, you're perhaps sitting in the middle with police officers surrounding you. You make your way to the police station, you put in a cell. So it's a very sort of, it's an environment which is not obviously comfortable, obviously. You're locked in and you don't know what to do, right? So your liberty is deprived. And what we've heard and what we've dealt with in the past is, and through case authorities you can also see, is that persons who are sometimes arrested or detained are either threatened, are ill-treated. Police brutality cases have come to our attention as well and it's been made known through the media. And so what happens is that we wanted to cut down on these allegations. And the way to do that was to get into partnership with the police. And I'm very happy to say that the police have taken this initiative on board with us with open arms. And never before have defense lawyers and police actually worked together. So we've tried to bring that number of allegations down. In fact, we have. It's been successful in bringing down the number of allegations. We've dealt with people who falsely accused police officers of brutality. And we've, our lawyers and I myself have actually dealt with many of these cases. So it's not only about the rights of suspects, but it's also about the rights of police officers who want to conduct the interview in a manner that they should. What we're also trying to do at the same time is trying to move away from, let's say, confession-based approach. That is, police officer relying on a confession made by an accused or suspect. Moving from there, what we want is people or the police relying on, let's say, actual evidence gathering. So moving away from confessions and focusing mostly on evidence to make sure that they're successful in prosecuting their cases.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes clear from that answer that you need a lot of cooperation with police officers as well, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about the relationship that you have with the Fiji police and the sort of training that's undertaken in the implementation of the first hour procedure.
Initially when we started, obviously there was some reluctance by some officers to engage with the Legal Aid Commission because they always saw us as enemies. We heard comments that, we arrest them, you take them out. So we've changed that mindset, I must say, that now we walk into the police stations, we're all like all good friends. They've realized the benefit of this because we've conducted trainings together with the police. We've taken them through voir dire trials, how we conduct it and why it is conducted. Voir dire basically is a trial within a trial where confession is challenged. So we showed them that these are the gaps that you need to fill, right? If you give the suspect their rights and if you comply with the constitutional requirements, then obviously you will not have any problems facing a voir dire matter in court. So training between the two institutions has been, has led to that success so far. And we're looking forward to further collaboration with the police.
If you'll allow us to just take a few moments out and sort of play out a scenario where if I were to be arrested or detained, what would I have to know in order to exercise my rights in the first hour procedure?
Let me also just perhaps add that the Fiji Human Rights and Discrimination Commission also actively involved in this, and we work together with them as well in the first hour procedure. So let's say if I'm arrested or detained, so what will happen is the police obviously will take me to the police station, they'll process me, take down all the relevant information, and soon thereafter they'll make a call to the Legal Aid Commission if this person does not have a private lawyer. So there are standard operating procedures that the police have and the Legal Aid Commission has. So that procedure actually guides them as to how they will then carry on with this first hour. So the call is made and one of my admin staff would actually take that call, and whoever the lawyer is on duty would then attend to that call within the first hour. And let me also point out that the service is available 24/7, public holidays as well, in the weekends. So the lawyer is dispatched. The lawyer would then come to the police station, identify him or herself, and then the police officer will lead this person to a room where the first hour procedure would be undertaken. So the first hour procedure basically is taking a suspect through the rights, or the constitutional rights that they have under Section 13. So the suspect will be informed that these are the rights that you have. You have right to remain silent. You can also cooperate if you wish. You have the right to ask for a legal aid assistance later if you are brought to court. So a range of rights that are read out in that first hour procedure is relayed to the suspect. And let me also just say that it's not legal advice. This is basically legal information, because at that point in time the suspect has not been charged, so there are no disclosures given. So what we're basically doing is actually giving them legal information. And now what we've done is we've also got not only our lawyers but also our paralegals involved in this as well, providing that service.
And has the first hour procedure been implemented Fiji-wide or only in selected areas?
The pilot project is centered only in Totonga Police Station, the CID. But what I've said is before, through various presentations to the media, is that this service is actually available throughout Fiji. If you look at Section 13, it says that a person or suspect has rights to obviously consult a lawyer. So what's happened now is, although the 2 stations are here in Suva, we also have calls coming from the western northern divisions where people say, look, my friend or relative is locked up in the police station. Could you please send a lawyer to assist? It may not necessarily be within that first hour, but we definitely have gone and assisted persons who have been arrested or detained in those areas too.
So in the places where it was implemented, for example, Totongo, are there obvious changes that you've seen or noticed?
Yes, most definitely. First is the attitudinal and mindset of the police officers. They've realized the benefit of this. What we've also seen is the drastic decrease in the number of allegations against police officers as well. And what we've also seen is that not only has it been beneficial to the suspect, but the police and the Legal Aid Commission as well. We've also come across some challenges, no doubt. We've also learned along the way as to how we all need to work together to deal with juvenile offenders, because young offenders cannot be dealt with alone. You need to have the parent or guardian or social welfare officer present. Persons with disabilities, special needs, the vulnerable groups. So these are things that we've learned as we've progressed with this.
When we come back from break, we'll discuss the Commission's 3-year strategic plan. Stay with us. So, Mr. Ali, the AG recently launched the 3-year strategic plan. Tell us more about what this plan is.
First and foremost, this plan is designed to actually further improve and enhance our services. And while doing so, we obviously have the future in mind as well. And we want to now embrace technology. You've seen our presence on social media, our website, and social media accounts that we've set up. So basically what we want to do is we are in the process of digitizing our systems and processes too. We're getting a new case management system in. We're getting an advisory helpline put in as well. And in fact, the whole IT infrastructure system of the Legal Commission is currently undergoing refurbishment, you can say. And what we want to do is, because we are out and about most of the time as well with the awareness programs, we attend to island court sittings where we don't have connectivity at times as well, and persons living in those areas don't have connectivity. So we're looking at systems where, or devices, how we can perhaps better use in terms of reaching out to those people in the maritime rural areas of Fiji as well. And at the same time, what we also want to do is obviously train and develop our staff, which is very important. And we don't only focus on lawyers. We also focus on other staff who are key to the success of Legal Aid or the growth of Legal Aid Commission. That includes obviously our paralegals, our frontline staff who are very important, and administration and finance team as well. And what we also want to do is revamp our awareness programs. What we call also is the empowerment and awareness programs, where we actually go out and meet with the members of the public. We provide, we have presentations and basically discussion on the laws, the constitution, the rights of persons or citizens of Fiji, and the services provided by Legal Aid Commission. In doing so, what we want to do is we want to empower our fellow Fijians, especially those who are the most vulnerable in the society.
So you mentioned that part of the 3-year strategic plan is making it accessible to ordinary Fijians,
Yes.
legal advice and information. You've also conducted numerous awareness sessions just in this year with FBC.
Yes.
And could you talk to us about some of the findings that you've come across? What are certain things that members of the public would be more interested in?
Yes. Yes, we have partnered with the FBC to take our roadshows around the country, which has been extremely successful. We started last year in November, and we haven't looked back, and we're about to recommence on another phase as well this year. What we found is when we actually go out and engage with the members of the public, we find that obviously people are now opening up with a lot of with Legal Aid Commission. They bring complaints, they bring concerns, complaints about legal aid services as well, and this is what we want from the public. We also want to improve our services when we go out to the public. We want to hear their voices, their concerns as to how we can better improve. What we also found is the highest demand is perhaps in the area of civil law, as I said. We found that a lot of people are now wanting to get wills done because they want to avoid the trouble thereafter when they're deceased, the fighting between family members as to who gets what. And we've also changed the mindset of some of these farmers. They initially thought that perhaps legal aid or legal aid services, or perhaps let's say a will, can only be done by a person who has a house, a fancy car, and has got a lot of money. No, it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. A farmer who's got a farm, a house, livestock, can also actually do a will to make sure that he or she leaves behind something for his or family. So we found that a lot of people were coming with those sort of questions as well, and that's why our roadshows were designed to actually address those concerns. And apart from that, we have a lot of family-related issues in the area of family law, and it's quite a sensitive matter. Obviously, families are breaking apart, and this is always not obviously it's not a good thing. So the focus has always been the children. So we explain to members of the public, look, yes, this is what you may want, but the law wants to know what will happen to the child, what is in the best interest of the child. So at the same time, while we're actually advising them, we're also making them aware of the rule of the law, or what the Constitution says, and what rights they have.
So I guess a large part of these roadshows that you do is actively going out into these communities instead of expecting them to come to you. And I guess that's one of the important things when you're considering changing mindset, is because to a large extent the mindset is that you only need a lawyer if you get into trouble.
Yes.
So especially with will making, there's a lot of publicity done around that now, and the importance of will making and the trouble that it does ensue when someone doesn't have a will and they pass away, and all of the matters being taken up to court. Recently, there's been publicity on the exorbitant rates charged by some private law firms. Do you think that historically this is one of the reasons why people, for example, in farming communities, feel that hesitation to actively seek out legal assistance?
Yes, and if I could just perhaps share some of the complaints that we received when we do this will drive is that in the past, when, let's say, people from the farming community or those who are poor were in trouble with the law, they could not afford the service of a private lawyer. So they either had to take a loan out from a financial institution or a bank, from a friend or a relative, or at times they had to mortgage their property to actually be able to pay. We've had complaints where persons have said that, we've actually had to transfer the property over to the particular lawyer because we couldn't pay. So those are the things that were happening. And now that we know Legal Aid is providing these services, what I say is we provide a choice. We're not in competition with any person or any law firm. We actually provide a choice now to those people who never had a choice before. And the range of services that we provide are far greater: family, criminal, civil law. And I said we have the expertise to actually do it as well. So when you talk about these sort of issues in terms of the high cost of fees by some of the private lawyers, yes, those are the complaints that we have received from members of the public, and that's why they perhaps choose Legal Aid now.
We'll have more for you when we come back right after the break. This year, the Legal Aid Commission hosted, or Fiji hosted, the very first Pacific Regional Legal Aid Conference. Tell us a bit about this conference.
Yes, the first ever for the Pacific, and the first one that Fiji has ever hosted as well, and a very proud achievement for all of us who are involved in this, especially for the Legal Aid Commission. The conference focused on the UN principles and guidelines on access to legal aid, which is the theme of the entire conference. So what we did was, this is also part of our strategy plan as well. And I'm glad to say that we've ticked this off as part of our strategy plan activity. The idea was to host something for the region, and for the region I mean the other Pacific Island countries. So we had representations or reps from quite a few Pacific Island countries, from the South Pacific area as well. And what we also did was we reached out to other legal aid providers around the world. So we had people from South Africa, the Netherlands, Canada, Tanzania, New Zealand, and a few other countries who came for this conference. It was all about knowledge sharing, sharing best practices, what they have, what we have, and I'm proud to say that Legal Aid Fiji stands up there, ranking as one of the highest or the best legal providers in the world. The service that we provide in the area of family, criminal, civil, and why I say we stand out is because most legal aid providers around the region, around the country, don't provide all these services. They either provide assistance only in criminal or family, or very limited assistance in these areas. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the funding provided by the government is perhaps one of the highest for Fiji and around the world as well for legal aid. The current funding actually stands at US $6 per capita, which is Fijian $12 per capita, which is very, very high if you compare us to the rest of the world. So that is also an achievement that we're very proud of. So having people from the region, having people locally, and having persons from overseas come and speak and address us all on not only the achievements, but also the challenges that all legal aid providers face, was obviously the intention of this conference. What we also wanted to do was collaborate further with our Pacific neighbors. Fiji has been termed as the hub of the Pacific. So what we wanted to make sure was not only all these other areas in terms of trade and stuff, but also in terms of legal aid provision as well, service delivery in the area of legal aid. Yes.
So quite an interesting concept. Who came up with it?
In 2015, when we were in the process of signing up under the Fiji Access to Justice project, which is funded by the European Union and implemented by the UNDP office, this is one of the things that we had asked for, to have a conference on legal aid hosted by Fiji so that we could showcase to the world what we have to offer. As I said, I point out with those information that I said earlier, that we are perhaps one of the best funded legal aid providers in the world, and the service that we provide are second to none as well. The UN Principles and Guidelines, if you have a look at it, has principles and guidelines, of course, and standards that must be met or should be met. I'm proud to say that Legal Aid Fiji has basically ticked all of it, and we didn't even know that until we had a consultant to come in, and we said, could you please carry out a review on Legal Aid Fiji? After that review, he said, well, I don't see what I can suggest because you guys have ticked everything. That's how we came to know about the UN Principles and Guidelines. So it's a very proud achievement for us in Fiji.
So all of this knowledge sharing and collaboration that happens with other countries in this conference, what's your takeaway? How has the Legal Aid Legal Aid Commission of Fiji walked away a better organization because of it?
You share the knowledge that you have with the others. That's what we do. And at the moment, what we've also done is we have Tuvalu, which has signed up on an MOU with Legal Aid Fiji. We did so back in 2017 in March. So what happens is that they will send their lawyers from the People's Lawyers Office of Tuvalu. They'll send their staff to undergo training development here in Fiji. They want to learn the systems that we have. They want to obviously get training on advocacy, litigation. We've provided that platform for them. What we've also got now from the conference, after we finish the conference, is we have Solomon Islands who are very much interested. Tuvalu, again, is on board as well. Tonga and Samoa are the other two countries that have actually shown interest. And just to let you know that prior to the conference, a delegation from Maldives had come in to visit the Legal Aid Commission. I met with the Attorney General and the delegates as well. And they also attended the conference. They're also very keen now to adopt something similar back in the Maldives as well, the legal system that we have. So again, we're up there with the rest of the world if you look at our standards. Yeah.
So are we expecting this to become an annual event or?
Not an annual event, but what we want to do is have it every 2 years. So that's one thing that we had discussed during the conference, that the possibility of perhaps one of the other Pacific Island countries hosting such an event. And but the feedback that we got is that perhaps they'll require our help as well. And we said we stand ready to help. So that includes, also includes the possibility of Fiji hosting it again because of manpower issues in some of these Pacific Island countries. So yeah, we're looking at doing such a conference again every 2 years.
So in the future, looking forward to what you can achieve. Of course, you've already ticked off all the boxes, but then again, you can always lift the benchmark higher. What do you have in store for the Legal Aid Commission, and what could be done so that the next time when you do have the conference, maybe some other countries would be interested in partnering with us?
We talked about the workload of the Legal Aid Commission staff, the file count, which is still a bit higher, I would say. So what we're trying to do now is, and I mentioned about quality, make sure that we don't compromise on quality. So that is one area that we're now focusing on. With obviously, we're embracing technology. Hopefully that will assist us in reducing some workload through engagements through those technological means. But also, what I want to do is, in the next couple of years, get quality audits done, just like how we have finance audits carried out. So what we want to do is we want to set up an independent committee or a group of people who would perhaps carry out some audit of our case files to see whether we're actually putting in that quality effort into each and every file. And that is one way of finding out as to how good we are or how a person is performing in respect of a particular case. So that is one thing that we're working towards at the moment, quality service delivery as well.
When we come back, we'll have our final segment and we'll discuss what's coming up next for the Legal Aid Commission. Stay with us. In wrapping up the show in our final segment, let's talk about some of the things that you said earlier, especially with the 3-year strategic plan, you mentioned that you'd like to digitize a lot of your services. And recently, it can be noticed that Legal Aid Commission is also stepping up its social media presence. So what's driving this? What's the rationale behind this?
Yeah. At the conference, the Attorney General pointed out that we have 95% coverage in terms of mobile phone coverage, and we have more SIM cards than we have people in this country. So obviously, these are things that we've taken on board and realized the importance of social media. And because people have smartphones now and they have access to data, and we are now able to actually then reach out to these people who we were not able to reach out to before. So let's say even a person out in Rotuma somewhere would have access to, say, a social media account or a Facebook account. So in the past, yes, we were sort of against the idea of having a social media account. But we realize the importance of it now, of course. And being able to engage with such people, even though they're not here face to face, is what we want. And 60% of the population of Fiji, I'm told, has a Facebook account or uses Facebook, which is extremely high. And the population or the age bracket that we currently have is, I think, majority of them are under the age of 40, if I'm correct as well. So we have a generation which is coming up, which is also very techno-savvy as well. So obviously we want to capitalize on this and use social media to our advantage to be able to reach out to the people as well. So even if a person may not necessarily have a legal problem, they may know someone who does. So to be able to actually put that information out through these different platforms is what we want to achieve as well through this social media accounts.
So let's say, for example, 5 years down this line, the way it's developing, the main aim here is to get information out through social media, or is there engagement also planned?
Apart from social media, obviously by engagement you mean face-to-face interaction. Yes, of course, that sort of engagement obviously needs to go on as well. But again, we want to trial this out as well to see how best we can reach out to the Fijians, even the most remote and maritime areas of Fiji, and to be able to engage with them not only through the digital platform, but also face-to-face as well. In order to give legal advice, you may not necessarily be able to give proper legal advice over a social media posting or a comment. These things are obviously confidential as well. And having that face-to-face interaction still has a lot of effect as opposed to doing something online. But having said that, what we also want to do is we want to make things easier for members of the public. We're currently trialing something with our website, and that is online applications, which we've never done before. So apart from having a physical manual paper, hard copy paper application, we're trialing something on our website. And if you are accessing our website, you'll see that some of those links are not available. I'll show you in the next few weeks or a month or two, you'll have that available on our website. So test it out. We'd like to be able to perhaps have online chats with some of these people through social media or even on our website as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've mentioned before that sometimes the workload does get to lawyers, and that's why you need paralegals to help out with some of the case files that they do handle. Recently there was a training that was done for paralegals at a workshop. Yeah. Talk to us about it. Why just the paralegals?
Yes, the paralegals, they provide a lot of service to members of the public, which is perhaps you can say underrated at times as well. We have law clerks who work in private law firms who perhaps do the same sort of work as well. So paralegals, what they do is they not only see members of the public, sometimes they're the first point of contact with members of the public. They're the ones who sit and listen to the problems. Right? The lawyer may not necessarily be around because he or she is in court. So our paralegals play a very dominant role, I would say, and at times they're the face of the commission as well. So apart from taking instructions from clients, they also draft legal documents, right? Family court forms. There's 26 different family court forms. Not all lawyers are available to actually fill those forms. So what we do is we have trained paralegals to be able to do that as well. So these paralegals also accompany us for awareness programs. So not only in terms of doing office work, but they also do awareness programs for us. They go to road shows, they draft wills for us as well, and obviously it's overseen by a lawyer, no doubt. So we wanted to make sure that whilst we're training lawyers, we must equally support and train and develop our paralegals, because without their support, a lawyer would face difficulties making sure that all documents and files are in order. So capacity building at all levels, not only for the lawyers.
You mentioned something really interesting that I guess is very important for the public to understand as well, that it's not necessarily a legal problem. Even if you want a form to be, if you need help filling out a form, Legal Aid can do something as simple as that, right?
Yes.
And you don't need the added procedure of providing your income statement or proving that you're eligible to receive help.
No.
You can just go and visit and get that help, right?
Yes, yes. Perhaps I should have pointed this out earlier. Thank you, Ziad. The services provided by the Legal Aid Commission are free, of course. Legal advice is available to anyone and everyone. We don't check whether you will qualify for legal aid. So if you wish to have some form of legal advice on any area of the law, you can simply walk into any of our branches and get that. For legal representation, obviously you need to apply for legal aid assistance. So if you want to get your birth certificates witnessed, marriage certificate, death certificates, or a statutory declaration or an affidavit, we do that for free. Private lawyers do charge a fee, obviously it's a service, but all our services are free. So I would encourage people to actually utilize and capitalize on our services that we offer.
Looking forward to what the Legal Aid Commission will be doing in the future, are there any partnerships that you've got with any organizations for capacity building or any other purposes?
Right. At the moment, we work very closely with the Fiji Police Force. We work also closely with the Human Rights Commission, although there's no formal sort of arrangement, but we work very well together. Last week, Friday, my team and I met with the Fiji Disabled People's Federation at their office. So, looking forward to working forward towards this sort of collaboration is what we want. We want to engage with stakeholders as well, especially in the area of disabilities and special needs, because that's an area perhaps that we have not done as much as we should have. I admit that. And we also have a board member who represents that organization as well. So it has given us an opportunity to perhaps better collaborate with them, and what we're trying to do now is see the possibility of entering into an MOU with the Fiji Disabled People's Federation. What we also want to do is to make sure that when we talk about access to justice, how are they able to access it? Is it truly accessible by persons with special needs or those who are vulnerable? So those are things that we want to address as well. And what we also want to do is, we've discussed last week with the delegation, was that when we do awareness programs, perhaps the possibility of getting them involved with our awareness programs and vice versa as well. So working together with the stakeholders is what we're looking forward to.
I suppose to wrap up the program, we should ask, if one were to seek out legal advice or help from the Legal Aid Commission, what's the criteria that they need to tick off?
For advice, it's all free. As I said, you can just walk in. In order to apply for legal aid, you need to apply using the legal aid application form. You can access our services through the social media platforms that we have, Facebook, Twitter, and you can also access it on our website as well. You can call on 992-3886 if you wish to call up and ask for some advice over the phone. Email us at info@legalaid.org.fj as well. So those are the various ways that you can perhaps contact us, or just simply walk into any of our branches nearest to you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We wish the Legal Aid Commission all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for you on the show tonight. To find out more about the Legal Aid Commission and the services they provide, you can visit any one of the 19 Legal Aid Commission branches throughout the nation. We'll see you next week. Have a good evening.